Welcome to Section 6, Testing Vuex Applications. In this video, we're going to be focusing on writing unit tests for mutations. So we're going to focus on testing each mutation in as much isolation as possible. Alright, so what I've done so far is get this all set up for running our unit tests. Since we're using Vue CLI, all I really had to do is just run vue add, and then @vue/CLI plugin unit jest. And that automatically did a lot of the setup in the package.json and also adding the relevant config files. The other thing that I did is create a mock file. If you've used several testing libraries before, then you might be familiar with the concept of mocks. Basically, what the mock is a way to make it so that you're not actually calling functions in your test. For example, we don't want to call the API in our tests because that's going to slow down our test. And it's also going to make it so that if the API fails, then our tests are going to fail as well. And for unit tests, we want each test to be as individual and isolated as possible. For the end-to-end test, which we'll do later, if the API fails, we're going to want to know about that. But for now, we just want to make sure the mutations are working. And so what the API is doing isn't really relevant. So I have all these functions here, and they're fake functions that are just returning data in a promise. So it looks like it's calling the API, but really it's actually just returning mock data from this file. Okay, so that was all I had to do to set it up. So now we can get right ahead to writing the tests. So you see that we have this tests folder and it has this unit folder. And this was all automatically created by the vue add command that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to create a file called user.spec.js. Actually, user.module.spec.js. So these are going to be all the tests for the user module. If you've used Jest before, maybe for Vue or maybe for something else, then you'll be familiar with the syntax, but it's really similar to a lot of other testing libraries. So first we're going to create a describe block, which is going to have all of the tests for the mutations in the user module. There we go. And then before each test runs, we're going to want to reset the store state. And that will do that. Reset state is just a simple function here that takes the default state right when the app loads, and then whenever it's called, it replaces the state in the store with that default state. Okay, so now we can start writing a test. First, we're going to go into the mutations for the user module, and then we're just going to go through each mutation and write a test for it. So we're going to start with set token. So to make sure that this is working, we're going to have to call into the store. So let's import our store. And we can use this import of @/store. If you've used Vue CLI before, you'll know that the is a shorthand for the source directory. So this is a lot easier than typing out. It'd be like, dot, like going all the way up the chain to find where source is and then going down from there. So that's really nice. And because we're using Jest through the Vue CLI, then that's automatically going to work. And we're not going to have to do any extra configuration because Vue CLI already configured it for us. So we'll call store.commit. And now we need to import our mutation types. So here again, we can just do a normal import because it's the exact same import because of this @shorthand. So we'll set the token, and to get an example token value, we'll go to our mock data that I showed you earlier. So once we run that commit, then we're going to want to make sure that the state is correctly changed, because all we're testing is that this mutation ran correctly. If the mutation ran correctly, then state.token is going to be that new token. So we'll expect that the user's token and the user module in the state is going to be that mocked access token. Then we're also going to check to make sure that it set the Axios default authorization header, which should be done by the setToken method of the API. So we're also checking the authorization token. And that should be good. Let's try running our test. This test unit command is automatically added by the Vue CLI once we add in the Jest plugin. There we go. So it ran it, everything ran correctly, and we can see our coverage here. And most of the mutations are covered. That's nice. But most of the actions aren't, which makes sense because we're not really testing the actions yet. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to when I have the rest of the mutations all written. There, so now we have all the tests for the mutations in both modules. So there's one to make sure it's setting the current user. And that's just checking that when you set the current user, it's equal to the set current user. And the list module, once again, before each are resetting the state, the committing syntax is exactly the same. So here it's list / and the mutation name. And then we're just checking to make sure that it does what it's supposed to do. Most of these mutation tests are really simple, and that's just because the mutations themselves are really simple. And so it's really not that much work to write them. It's more just making sure that you check that the mutation does what it's supposed to do. And let's just make sure that all the tests are running correctly. There we go, they both passed. We have complete coverage in the mutations.js file. And everything is looking good. That's it for this video.